This episode of WDW Today is being sponsored by All-Star Vacation Homes. And on your next trip to Walt Disney World, why not have a lot of space on your next vacation? Why not have private bedrooms for everyone in your party, private pool, a nice game room perhaps? These are just some of the many amenities that a typical All-Star Vacation Home has. Check them out online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com.
This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Friday, July 17th, 2009, and this is episode 592 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg of StudioCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Len Testa, co-author of the Inofficial Guide to Walt Disney World. And Len, I forgot to ask you the other day, how did you spend your Bastille Day?
Yelling "Vive la France" and waving the red, white, and blue, just like everyone else.
That's right, cutting off your tax collector's head and putting it on a pike.
Saying, let them eat cake, but it wasn't really cake. But anyway.
Nice. Also joining us on today's show is Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime for you, buddy.
Oh, thank you.
And joining us also is Annette Owens, the Manager, Customer Relations and Group Services for MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Welcome, Annette.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Oh, anytime. And our special guest today is Sean Slater, a 20-year Walt Disney World cast member in a number of different roles, including stints as a writer for Walt Disney Entertainment and Walt Disney Imagineering. But he can also be found currently as a curator of DisneyShawn.blogspot.com. That's Disney, SHAWN. Great blog. I highly recommend it. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks a lot, man. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on over here. And Sean, as you write your blog on a I would not even say a daily basis. It's even more than a daily occurrence in your terms of your entries. But what you do on the blog is you tell stories, and we brought you on today to tell us some stories. In fact, and one particular story that I found really, really interesting, and the others haven't heard this story before. In fact, it was something that was so interesting I had never heard of it before. And this goes back to your time many, many years ago working at Epcot. Well, this goes actually to the Living Seas Pavilion. And Sean, why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit about the project that you worked on that saw the light of day, but ever so briefly.
Sure. Yeah, Matt, this was back in the late 90s, during the time that I was working for Walt Disney Imagineering, and got to work on a lot of different things, many of which actually ended up in the park. Many others I can't talk about, but this was one that we actually got to debut and test, and it was sort of a prototype project for what ultimately has become Disney's Living Character Initiative. So, some people may be familiar with some of the other projects that have been part of that, things like Lucky the Dinosaur or the Muppets Mobile Lab. But this was the very first test of an animatronic character or figure that isn't tethered to an attraction.
Right, and we're talking about the early 90s here. Lucky came out late 90s. Okay, yeah, so still predating Lucky and the rest of the other initiatives that came after this.
Absolutely. Yeah, very early on. And we were, at the time, looking for new ideas for the Living Seas Pavilion, how to refresh and revitalize the pavilion. And we hit upon this test, and it was a partnership between several of us at Walt Disney Imagineering, including the research and development team, as well as the company that works on building aquatic characters for movies.
Ooh, like Jaws?
They didn't do Jaws, but...
Oh, that's right. Jaws was an actual shark. I forgot.
Called Great Blue Sea. Or there was a shark movie that had Samuel Jackson. I remember he got pretty good in that.
I do remember that movie.
Yeah, something blue.
Yeah, I can't remember the title right now, but they worked on that one as well. So we worked together with them, and we created a dolphin. A robotic dolphin that actually performed as part of a show inside the Living Seas. We presented it for 5 days in 1999 during the Millennium Kickoff event. It was a time when we knew that we would have pretty much every executive in the company here at Walt Disney World so they could all go through and take a look at it. But it was also just really cool that we got to present it for our guests out there in the Living Seas Pavilion. And the dolphin looked completely realistic. I mean, it could swim like a real dolphin. It behaved like a real dolphin. It was all puppeteered in real time. Of course, that's where we ran into a little bit of a hang-up. Our animal programs team. Of course, they do tremendous work with the live animals at the Living Seas and over at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Fort Wilderness. They're understandably very sensitive about the work that they're doing with real animals, and they have real dolphins at the Living Seas that they study and work with. So working with them, we didn't want to overstep our bounds or go into what they're doing. So
you didn't want to build a better dolphin.
Exactly. So and of course, no robot dolphin could be a real dolphin. But it
would be better and bionic. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Even though our dolphin looked completely realistic, we made him look robotic. We actually put a yellow wetsuit on him, a little antenna coming out of the head, things that weren't really necessary, but just to kind of...
It's like the Terminator dolphin. I love this. Did you do like one red eye? Dude, that totally would have rocked, Sean.
He did have a camera in one of his eyes.
That's so
gosh.
awesome.
Bionic dinosaur. Not dinosaur. Dolphin.
Did you name it Steve?
Yeah, we have the resources. We have the money.
Every time his tail moved, it would go. This is why I'd never be hired as an Imagineer. Right here. Go ahead, Steve.
We called it DRU, DRU, the Dolphin Robotics Unit. And part of the story of the show that we presented with Drew is that the live dolphins are there so that we can study how dolphins think, their cognitive abilities. And that's really what a lot of the research that happens at the Living Seas is about. But then Drew 1 was built, at least according to our story, so that we could study the way dolphins move, their propulsion and hydrodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded good. Really, it was so that we could test doing this cool animatronic. But it sounded like a really good story. We would do this show. The show would have a live host in the observation deck there on the second level of Seabase Alpha. He'd talk to the guests and let them know about Drew, kind of introduce him, and then talk to a diver in the tank. We actually had a diver in there on mic, and he'd say, "Have you seen Drew today?" Yeah, I think he was around here somewhere. And at that moment, the dolphin would swim up toward the window, right next to the dive. And they'd talk a little bit about what Drew is and the purpose behind it, and put him through some of his paces swimming around. And talk about how, we have an onboard Drew cam. They'd switch on the camera, and you could see it in all the TV monitors there in the observation module.
Wow.
And ask Drew to swim up close to different species so that we can actually watch them closely. And the host would identify, that's a yellow-tailed whatever. I'm no marine biologist. And
I'm an Imagineer, not a biologist, damn it.
Yeah, right. I'm going to say that next.
But then he would ask, Drew, can you show us the strangest creature you've seen all day? So at that point, Drew would swim back up to the window and focus the camera on a kid sitting in the front row.
That's awesome.
So it was a funny little moment, but then also led to a nice conservation message, about human beings are strange looking to dolphins. We're foreign to their environment, all that sort of thing. So that was fun. And then we do a little bit more with the swimming of the dolphin, and then pick another kid out of the audience and actually bring them up to show them how the controls work. And that was a really cool interactive moment where we would bring the Drew unit right up front, and the diver would just sort of hold it steady as we turned the controls over to the kid completely. And, it wasn't like at Lights Motors Action. This was real. We actually let the kids move the head back and forth and up and down and open the mouth. It was really neat. Then, the show would, wrap up. We'd talk a little bit more about some of the work with Drew and how studying different methods of propulsion could one day lead to more efficient methods of moving ships or submarines or boats.
Wait, were you guys the ones that were training the dolphins to put explosives on the boats? Or was that the Army?
I don't think that
was the Navy. That was the Navy. There's just so many dolphin stories floating around. I forget what. Okay, cool. Never. Probably wasn't you guys, is what you're saying, though, right?
No, we'll let the military stick to that.
Okay. As far as you know, no.
That's right. I have no knowledge whatsoever.
So basically, the premise of the project, Sean, was you guys kind of came up with the idea for it and set, of a robotic dolphin, and kind of just pitched it as that, as kind of they probably didn't call it a living character initiative at the time, but you basically just pitched it as that, what we would call now a living character initiative.
Right. Yeah. The idea was, like I say, it was really just the grain of a notion of getting animatronics out there, or using technology to create characters that live in an environment in a very realistic way, as compared to what they had always traditionally been, which is bolted to the seats.
I love the live in an environment distinction. That's the best explanation of that program I've heard.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was sort of the whole idea, is just getting them out there. And the hope was that if Drew were successful, then maybe we can do something more with sharks or with mythological sea creatures. There were a lot of different ideas pitched around. Ultimately, the aquatic robotics turned out to be less practical for theme park use. It took just a little bit too much to kind of keep them going on a regular basis, as far as manpower and backstage support and maintenance, and so many different things we have to consider. But it was the first step towards all the other things that have come since then.
Hey, Sean, we're going to post on the show notes a link to the video of Drew, and I'm looking at it right now, and this is absolutely amazing. This thing looks like a real dolphin, minus the wetsuit.
You have a video?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. The link is in the show notes. It is amazing to see this thing, because it looks like, if you didn't tell me this, if you took away the stupid wetsuit and you threw it in the tank, I would believe it's a real dolphin. It is amazing to see this thing. So now, this thing is amazing. We all agree.
I can't believe first of all, I can't believe somebody actually taped it. then I can't believe it's already on YouTube while we're talking about it.
Everything is on YouTube, Len.
Everything's on YouTube. You know what?
I haven't seen it in 10 years.
It's amazing. I'm looking at it now.
The video is very, very well done.
Yeah.
Now, my wife has done the Dolphins in Depth program twice. So while you're talking, I called her down to show her this, and I think it's either Bob or Toby that he's playing with at one scene here, and it's really, it's really difficult to tell the two apart.
Yeah, it's amazing. So this thing is
interesting. So that actually
dude, that thing looks awesome.
There was something else that we did. The show I described was the main show that we did several times a day. But they did another bit a couple of times, which is probably that video, where they were testing the interaction between the robot and the real dolphins. Because obviously the real dolphins, and yes, it was Bob and Toby at the time, they can completely tell that Drew is not real.
Oh, no kidding.
Between echolocation and just the sounds of his motors.
Oh,
yeah, they can probably tell.
and his foreign accent.
I say the secret handshake. Or maybe it's the long
We don't
cable.
understand him.
Exactly. What's the password?
But yeah, during most of the shows, they actually kept Bob and Toby, in their backstage tank enclosure. But wow, that's interesting. If somebody got a video of.
Yeah.
But
So did it stress the
Dude,
other dolphins out?
this thing is fabulous.
I'm sorry, Annette?
I was saying, did it stress the other two dolphins out to have the other one in the tank with him, or they just
No,
stayed away, or?
Yeah, it didn't.
Okay.
They were very sensitive about that on the animal program.
We took customer satisfaction surveys of the dolphins.
Yeah, they gave it an 8.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Sean. I was waiting for someone to say that. Thank you.
They were
Let's
very
fire scope.
concerned
We'll keep
about-
Sean on. Go ahead.
about Bob and Toby's reactions. That's why they didn't really bring them out until day 5 of our test, because they had been monitoring them backstage, because they knew that they were hearing something different. And then it was a very slow introduction, but they thought that their behavior was normal.
It's interesting. So this thing is really cool, Sean. So you mentioned it only lasted a couple of days. Why did it only last for a very short time? Because this thing looked amazing.
They lost the keys.
Well, like I say, it's a test, and a lot of the things that they do, especially at research and development at WDI, are not necessarily intended, at least not yet, for full-time presentation in the parks. They're constantly looking for new ways to push the envelope, to use technology, to create enhancements for our guest experience. This was just one more way to say, okay, let's try something, and hopefully we can develop it at some point where it can be a permanent feature in the park. But initially, it's just there's some development money. Let's throw that at it and see what we get.
Yeah, but why only 5 days? I mean, why not 6 months? I mean, what? Clearly this isn't something you guys whipped up over a weekend, right?
Right.
Class project.
It took us a while to put the whole thing together.
So, long run, short slide. Why only 5 days?
I think it mostly just boiled down to the personnel that were involved.
Okay. You didn't have time to keep doing the demos with the people. You didn't. It's like you didn't have time to do 3 shows a day or something with the people, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Right.
Because it's not like we just trained some people off the street or something to do it.
Yeah.
Certainly, the animal care team at the Living Seas were the ones that we taught to do the spiel, kind of the narration of the show.
Yeah, and they have day jobs. I get it.
Right, but everybody, as far as the puppeteers, the backstage support crew, the divers, they were all either from Imagineering or from our partner company.
Interesting. Well, Sean, this is an amazing story, and we're glad that you could share it with us over here. And of course, don't forget to check out Sean's blog, DisneySean.blogspot.com, and he posts all sorts of really interesting backstories to a lot of different things at Walt Disney World, a lot of great details in there. So it's a DisneyShawn, and DisneySean.blogspot.com. Sean, it was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for these stories, and we're going to have you back on to talk about some other things.
Oh, definitely.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. And don't forget, this episode of WDW Today has been sponsored by All-Star Vacation Homes. And the next coolest thing than a swimming dolphin that's artificial, that's right, All-Star Vacation Home. Because it's got game rooms and private pools and full kitchens and lots of other wonderful amenities. And it really isn't going to break the bank to stay there. Why not give them a try? Visit them online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, visit the WDW Today website at wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Sopa, Mike Newell, the fabulous Annette Owens, and Sean Slater, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.